Hello all you beautiful people, I'm Mizzz Sally Pryde, this with 3 Z's and a Y, because why not? In this video I'm going to be doing something a little bit different than what I usually do. I can see one of 3 reasons you might want to have clicked on this video. 1, you saw the good doctor in the title and thumbnail and I'm interested in hearing more. The second reason is that you're familiar with who Lily Simpson is, like maybe you're one of her subscribers, and I just want to say, we have very similar content. You might want to subscribe here. Lastly, if you're here because you're one of my regular subscribers, welcome back. And I also encourage you to follow and subscribe to Lily Simpson. We make very similar content. She does a lot of videos about where she talks about trans episodes in TV shows. I like to make a bunch of different types of videos. I like to make videos about trans and drag themed movies. I also do a bunch of misconceptions and breakdowns about what it's like to be trans. And I've also made a handful of content about autism as well. And to be clear, I do not have a personal issue with Lily Simpson. I actually really enjoyed her video. In fact, I encourage all of you who haven't seen it to go watch her video on this, because she does make some really excellent points about trans representation. However, as an autistic trans woman myself, I have some thoughts about what she talked about in terms of autism. Now, granted, none of the stuff she brought up in the video was factually incorrect. However, I feel like she missed some of the points when talking about autism. I want this to be a learning opportunity. As far as I'm aware, Lily Simpson is not autistic. And I'm not going to say a blanket statement of, if you're not autistic, don't talk about autistic things. No, she actually did a decent job of it for what I presume to be a neurotypical. However, there's a lot more nuance to this. One of the things she says in the video is perfectly stated and accurate. The presentation of savant syndrome has genocidal roots. Now, when talking about autism and genocide, there is a long history there. In fact, I've actually already made a video about it. It's a bit more comedic, which sounds like an odd combination, but it does make sense. Because really, the roots of genocide in autism are very extensive, and they go all the way back to Nazi Germany. And sort of this idea of like autism exceptionalism is based in Nazi Germany. Asperger's, as it was known at the time, was literally used as a saying, these are model citizens. These are what people should strive to be. And that's not a good side for anyone to be on. Nazi Germany was an interesting case when it came to autism because they both targeted autistic people and praised them. Depending on how you presented autism, we're on either extreme of it. Also, there's a lot of sexism and racism tied into this, which is still part of the diagnostic criteria for autism today. To this day, as a result of the history of autism here, there is still diagnostic barriers in place depending on your gender and your race. Stuff like that changes how people see autism. However, the issues start to arise in her video when she talks about Autism Speaks. Now, this is a very brief moment. She talks about how, for the first season of the show, they were heavily tied to Autism Speaks. She says it's not a very good charity for autism, which technically is true. Autism Speaks is a hate group. I'm not even being hyperbolic there. It's a hate group. That's why in a previous video, I actually called out Lady Gaga for being a supporter of Autism Speaks. Now, when Lily talked about the breakdown of how Autism Speaks spends their money, yes, it's a problem that most of their money ends up going into their promotional material and stuff like that. In fact, their promotional material doesn't have a good reputation. Just take a look at I Am Autism.
I am autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly.
It's literally a horror film about autism, and much of their messaging talks about eradicating autism. Autism is who we are as a people. There is a culture there. So when you go after us, it is literally genocide. They are a hate group. Not to mention, they have countless discrimination lawsuits against them. Seriously, they're an organization, at least as they claim, to support people with autism, and yet they have several lawsuits against them based on discrimination. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. But one of the other things I really wanted to talk about, and this is something that is heavily misunderstood. Lily mentions how in the financial breakdown of Autism Speaks, there should be sending more money to family services. Now, to someone who does not know what that means, this sounds like something that money should be going to families with autistic children and autistic adults deserve support. But what does support mean? And for some of you, you probably have an idea of where I'm going with this, but others, you may not. Support often means applied behavioral analysis, also known as ABA. At some point, I will make a video about ABA, but in a nutshell, ABA is conversion therapy. Literally shares the same origins with the same researchers. Plus, on top of that, the literal development of it was based on people who didn't think autistic people were even human. Not to mention about 75% people who go through ABA end up having serious trauma from it, or even PTSD. And the main purpose behind the ABA is to teach masking skills, to hide your autism. And some have interpreted this as lessening the effects of autism, or making it less obvious, or even eradicating it in some extreme cases. But here's the thing, that's not what ABA does. It's masking. People do this all the time, but it gets more extreme in this case. And for those who are unaware, I'm basing this off the social model of disability, not the medical model of disability. The social model of disability says that people are disabled by society, whereas the medical model talks about illness-based stuff. To use a wheelchair user as an analogy here, the medical model of disability would say that someone who uses a wheelchair can't walk, or at least not walk for extended periods of time, and therefore that limits your daily activities. The social model of disability says that same person who uses a wheelchair is disabled by society, as there isn't enough inclusivity in society. For example, if there's a meeting up a flight of stairs and there's no elevator or a ramp, that is a social model of disability right there. They're being limited by society, not by the fact that they're in a wheelchair. It's the fact that society won't accommodate them. And I use the word accommodate there, but really, this is just a difference in who we are. For example, eye contact, which is considered a core part of the social foundation, is actually more of a Western idea. Not every culture makes eye contact with each other. In fact, in some cultures, making eye contact with each other is a sign of intimidation. And not only that, eye contact doesn't mean you're paying attention. Eye contact just means you can follow someone's eyes. You might be saying, well, how else am I supposed to know they're paying attention if they're not making eye contact? Well, you can tell that they're paying attention by the fact that when you stop talking, they answer based on what you have said. That shows they're paying attention. Yes, as an autistic person, things are different for me. For example, I can't read facial expressions. And that might sound like it's a dramatic factor on my quality of life, but really, it isn't. Because guess what I do when talking to other people? Since I can't read their face, do you know what I do? It's gonna sound really strange, but it's so easy to do. You know what I do? I ask people, how are you feeling? Revolutionary concept right there. See, you don't need to read the facial expressions so long as people are giving you an honest answer. And if you're not giving an honest answer to people who can't read your facial expressions, you just don't want them to know how you feel. Now, there's another element I want to discuss here that, in this case, was omitted from the video, and I think for good reason. There is statistical connections between being trans and being autistic. There have been studies that have linked being trans to being autistic, statistically at least. That if you're trans, you're more likely to be autistic. If you're autistic, you're more likely to be trans. But why is that? Well, I don't really know, and frankly, scientists don't really know either. But guess what? So what? We still know who we are, and we still deserve to be treated with love and respect. This is often an argument often used by trans folks to dismiss trans identities. Since we're autistic, we don't know any better. In fact, as autistic people, I think we're more likely to know ourselves than anyone else. Just saying. Not to mention that correlation does not equal causation. I've seen doctors on YouTube talking about how there's a genetic connection there, and I'm thinking, where in the data is it saying that? And there was even a discussion in this video here as to, well, if you have a patient who has gender dysphoria, you need to get them an autism diagnosis. Or if they have autism, you need to get them a gender dysphoria diagnosis. I think that's jumping the gun a bit, because remember, there are autistic trans people and there are autistic cis people. Trust me, I've met people from both categories. Wrap it up here. If you haven't seen Lily Simpson's video about the good doctor, please go watch it. She put a lot of work into it, and I really think it's very informative, and she hits the nail on the head, especially when it comes to trans stuff. If you're not subscribed to her, please subscribe to her, and if you're not subscribed to me, please subscribe to me. And I also have a Patreon, and you can support me on there for as low as $3 a month. You get extended cuts of my videos and everything. Plus, you also get to see some exclusive material, like my comedy special, Pride and Joy, a Trans Story. I put a lot of work into that, and it would really mean a lot if you signed up. But hey, if you can't do that, at least give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.